Zurich about regulation and certification, and the regulatory expert from ETH. But in addition, I'm also a lead auditor and a lead technical assessor at some notified bodies. And I'm also invested in some medical device companies, one also digital therapeutics. And so I want to emphasize and to showcase why regulatory is not boring. This is because regulatory is born from failure. And regulation doesn't prevent disaster. Regulation happens because disaster happened. And then the consequence was always that we defined some rules and regulations. And if you think AI in medicine is just ChatGPT with a stethoscope, then we have to talk. And I want to start to talk with you about failures that nobody told you. There was a big company with a ventilator with a silent failure. The ventilator stopped working, but no alarm signal was making some noises. And so the patient died. Nobody recognized this. There is the thalidomide or Contergan history, the pharmaceutics with all the child with the crippled hands and arms and legs. There's the Theranos universe, the big blood diagnosis lie. And of course, COVID vaccination. It's also something that didn't work as they told us or as they promised us. And why does this still happen? This is because of misclassification. This is because of the mismatch between the intended use and the marketing claims. COVID vaccination, the marketing claims are completely different than really the tested intended use. It's about bad documentation. It's about study endpoints maybe driven by money. And it's about shortcuts along the certification journey. It's about regulatory compliance. And so you always have to remember the ice is thin. We are standing on an ice and the ice is thin. The line between life-saving product and a lawsuit in your company is very thin. And you always have to remember, if regulatory or compliance fails, it's not for the benefit of the patient. It's always regulatory is safety and performance for the patient, but the lawsuit comes to you as a CEO, as a chief technical officer, as a quality manager. It comes to your company. And so it's really important that we know this. And so the question is, what actually makes the difference? How can we prepare that we don't break into the ice and fall in the water? And the ice is thin, as I said, and maybe one example everyone knows, a kind of a tracker, a smartwatch, a classical fitness tracker, clearly not a medical device. But if you say, hey, I also want to use it for muscle recovery, then the fitness tracker gets a medical device, a class 1 medical device. If you say, oh, maybe it's about tremor detection, then you are in a class 2B medical device. It's still the same fitness tracker or smartwatch. And if you use the smartwatch maybe to plan for insulin giving, then you have a combination product in the highest risk class, and still the same smartwatch, still the same software. And so what actually makes the difference? It's very clear. It's the same device, but different consequences. And this is all based on what you say it does. So it's your claim. It's your claim that you say, hey, my device does this and that. This claim makes really the difference. And this claim is called and known as the intended purpose. And so defining the intended purpose at the very first beginning, when you have your idea in mind, and to reshape your intended purpose. Maybe your design and development journey makes your intended purpose also changing, but always focus on the intended purpose, that this is always aligned to your design and development and to your claims and to your marketing language. And so you see there is one smartwatch and 4 different regulations and classifications and compliance work. I think this is pretty clear, or this we already have heard sometimes. But the question is there anything else that matters from the beginning? The intended purpose, of course. But there are 2 other things that I want to show you that also influence your medical device, and this is often forgotten about it. The next example is, I know you are all digital therapeutics, and this is a classical device, but it's so funny. It's from my auditor's work that I want to present you, and it's about the context of your medical device. Change the context, you change the classification. And this is a real case. It was a big pharma company, really a global player, that marketed a wart remover fluid, a pharmaceutical, a medicine. So it was a pharmaceutical product at the beginning. And the patient or the user of this fluid went to the supermarket and bought some cotton swabs to apply the fluid to the warts. And these cotton swabs, clearly a consumer good. You can get it at the supermarket at the corner. And then the marketing got the brilliant idea. It could be for the benefit of the patient if we give them also some cotton swabs together with the fluid. And what happened? At once, it was a complete stop of all marketing activities from these big global players, because now they have a combination product. They have a drug, a pharmaceutical, the fluid, but the cotton swab gets a medical device because he is packed together with the drug and has an own intended purpose to apply medicine on a wart. And so the complete marketing activities stopped, and I was onboarded to fix this mess, and we did a complete clinical evaluation of a cotton swab. And so put a cotton swab next to a drug, it becomes a medical device. And what changed? The ingredients of the fluid didn't change. The swabs didn't change. They have been the same ones. But the packaging and the purpose did. And so the question is, what would have been if you integrate this applying instrument into the bottle as you know it from finger nail paint? Is there something else? This would have been the intelligent way the marketing and the quality officers should have thought about, because then it stays pharma with a functional packaging. And so you have here really what I want to show you, that the intended purpose makes the difference, but also the context you bring your medical device makes a big difference. So context creates classification. That's clear. In a clinical study, you validate your device in relation to its intended purpose and its context of use. This is very important for all of you that plan a clinical study. And you know, if you plan your clinical study, you have to give the clinicians, the investigators, brochure. So, but if your brochure promises what your tech file can't prove, then your trial is already built on sand. And this is also something a lot of people or startups do not recognize. The investigator's brochure and the technical documentation is one framework. And so if there is inconsistency between the investigator's brochure and the technical documentation, the clinical trial fails, although it may show best results. But it's not based on your technical documentation. It's not anchored in your design and development. And so I forget the clinical trial. Why is this so? Because the developer, you have to inform the investigator when you start a clinical trial. So developer informs the investigator. And the developer informs the investigator based on his technical documentation. So you have to have a technical documentation in place before you start your clinical trial. And a lot of groups and startups and spin-offs, especially in the academic setting, have it the other way around. Because the technical documentation provides the input for the investigator's brochure. And so welcome to the regulatory puzzle. The tech file. What is the content of the tech file? It's your documentation of your design and development work from the beginning to the end. It's your results from risk management activities. It's your results from usability testing. There are your results from preclinical testing in the tech file, yeah? Biocompatibility, electromagnetic safety, whatever. And it is included the clinical evaluation, including the assessment of the general safety and performance requirements. General safety and performance requirements, very, very important for all of you. Medical Device Regulation Annex 1. These are requirements defined by the competent authority for every health tech medical device. And the clinical evaluation is part of the investigator's brochure. Huh? I'm at the beginning of my clinical study. Yes, because the clinical study is only a part of the clinical evaluation. If you see the whole framework of clinical validation, this is clinical evaluation and your clinical study. And the clinical evaluation starts with working with literature, analyzing benchmark products, analyzing golden standard treatment, analyzing alternative treatments. This you can do before you start your clinical trial. And only the rest, maybe a very, very important one, but for sure not the most important one, is the clinical trial. And especially in an academic setting, this is also seen different. The most important thing is an RCT note. So the brochure, what does the brochure inform the investigator about? About design and development, about risk management, about usability testing, about preclinical testing, and about clinical evaluation, including general safety and performance requirements. And the question is then the investigator's brochure an additional document? Because this often happens that the startups and spin-offs sit down and create an investigator's brochure. Is it an additional document? Yes or no? And the answer is yes and no, because the investigator's brochure is an excerpt of the tech file. And so it's based on your technical documentation, and the technical brochure informs about regulatory safety and compliance of your product. And there is no matter what kind of device, if it is an implant, an equipment, a wearable, a software as medical device makes no difference. So it's always about compiling safety, performance, and compliance data in the investigator's brochure based on your preclinical work, your design and development work, your risk management, everything like this is included. With the clinical study, then you validate your device. But who pays? Who controls? This is what you have heard before. The reimbursement landscape is so homogeneous. So it's really a jungle. And so you have to know who is my payer at the end. And on the table there sits maybe the Krankenkassen, the reimbursement agencies, you with your pitch deck, and some ethical committees, and everyone has another need, and you have to know all of them. Because study endpoints aren't just science, they are strategy. This is your strategy. This is your business strategy, because you want to earn money with your device. If you only want to have a nice poster on the wall, you can forget about this. But if you want to enter the market, you have to know that this is strategy. And imagine you build a brilliant device, it works, it's safe, you get the CE marking, but your study isn't detailed enough to get reimbursed, because the CE mark, this is also very, very important, allows you to sell your device on the market. But it's not a guarantee that someone buys your device. And so this is a very, very strategic thing. So what? What you prove depends on to whom you are proving it to. And there is maybe one, it's a very, very simple graphic or table here. It's much more complex in reality, but that you know it. If you aim for CE mark, then you are in the most simplest setting, because you have only, in hyphens, show safety and performance of your device. You can do this in a monocentric study, period. Then you get CE mark. But if you want to have reimbursement agencies on board, then safety and performance will not be enough, because everyone will say, hey, we hope that your device is safe. But show me that your device is better than one device that is already on the market. Why should we buy yours? Why should we reimburse yours? And then you have to show superiority, and then you are in a comparative setting. Again, if you only aim for CE mark, you don't have to do a comparative study. And the next thing is a typical German one. They are the digital Gesundheitsapplikation, DiGA, digital health application. They made it a little bit more complex. They want to prove, they want you to prove the benefit in a comparative study, your app against golden standard treatment, against the placebo app. And so there you are in a randomized controlled trial. This is mandatory, and this you have to know. If you want to be a DiGA, you have to know this from the beginning. And so you see that the landscape is very, very different. And once again, let's walk on thin ice together, because this is the third thing that influences your classification or your success on the market. Imagine you start with a little wellness app. Count steps, tracks mood. It's a consumer product, no MDR, no stress, period. But then you add one line. This app helps to reduce anxiety. So you fail through the ice if you are not prepared for medical device regulation, because now you are a software as a medical device regulation, classification 2A, maybe 2B. You have to respect ISO 13485 for quality management system, ISO 14971, ISO 62304, and all the other usual suspects. And then you make it smarter, and you add AI. And your device learns, it recommends therapy, it predicts crisis. Now you are skating on the thinnest ice ever, because now you are under the medical device regulation and the EU AI Act, and both are regulations. The EU AI Act is not an annex to the medical device regulation, it's an own horizontal regulation. So you have at the end dual compliance, two Bibles, two judges. One for medical device regulation and one for the EU AI Act. One product, three identities, each step thinner ice, each step deeper water. You have to know this. And without regulatory thinking, the last thing I want to show you is, I called it DiGAs and the home trap. Because a lot of startups and spin-offs do the clinical evaluation of their DiGA, of their software, of their app, a device tested in a shiny university hospital. Really nice. You have perfect light, you have perfect patients, you have perfect outcomes. But once at home, you have chaos, you have dim bedrooms, you have noisy kids, you have real life stress, and the device failed. Why? Because validation stopped at the clinic door. You don't have to enter the clinic if you have a digger that is used by the patient. Don't test it in a hospital. Why? You have to test it in the environment, in the context where your device is used. And then it gets a little bit more complex, because how do you monitor this? Yeah? You cannot onboard, you can onboard a CRO, but yeah, you have to rearrange the monitoring. And if you have only the clinical outcome, the regulatory will ask, where is your home environment patients benefit data? And you will say, don't have one. And so the outcome is your product gets no reimbursement, period. And so DIGA and the home trap, a product validated in a university hospital, may die in a teenager's bedroom. And the regulators, the competent authorities know this, and they will look about this. The question is, do you know this? So it's really, really important for all of you. And now we have 3 principles that influence your device. It's the intent and purpose at the beginning, it's the context where you use it, and it's the environment where you validate it. And so here is my top 3, the best misunderstandings and myths. It's a little bit out of my experience at ETH. Number 1, a successful RCT means I'm market ready. No. It means you have clinical evidence, but not regulatory approval. And if you have not backed your clinical, your RCT on your technical documentation, then you have what we auditors say, only anecdotal evidence. It's worth nothing. The third one, I can think about regulation later. No. By then, your endpoints may not fit your intended use. Your traceability is gone. Your usability is untested where it matters. And retrospective compliance is not compliance, it's archaeology. So that's worth nothing. Myth number 3, AI will impress the regulators. No. AI without validation is not innovation, it's gambling with patients. And the biggest misunderstanding of all, science and regulations are the same. No. And so science asks, does it work? Yeah, this you check. But regulation asks, is it safe? Is it reproducible? And is it aligned with your claims? And so I think this is also important that you know this. These are really some myths. And so my call to action is start with regulatory thinking. You can study it at ETH. And I have here 10 commandments of regulatory thinking. They are really, really important. First, define intended use or intended purpose precisely before you code a single line. Because this will guide you, this will influence your coding, this will influence your work. You have to know what you want to do. Second, begin risk management, usability engineering, and clinical evaluation with your idea in mind. Once you have your prototype in your hand, it's too late. Because risk management really starts in your mind. If you have an idea, you can think about risks. And risk mitigation is to design a medical device to avoid any risk. And so this starts with your idea. The same is usability. You can think about usability, how to handle the device with the idea in mind. Avoid sharp edges, think about a clean picture on the screen. This you don't have to see, oh, with the prototype, oh, it can't read anything. So it starts at the beginning. And the same is clinical evaluation starts with your idea in mind. You analyze your environment, golden standard treatment, alternative treatment, benchmark devices. So this starts early. And most startups start this too late. Respect the general safety and performance requirements, because this is design input. Everyone does, or most do not recognize this. The medical device regulation Annex 1 is design input for every device. Document your prototype according to MDR Annex 2. Also the prototype, not the finished product. The prototype also must be documented because documentation is an ongoing work along the journey. Ensure full traceability from requirements to verification and validation. Build cybersecurity and data protection. Plan usability testing in real environments, not family and friends. Start clinical studies only after a design freeze. You have to have a design freeze that you can feed back the learnings from a clinical study. If you want to do a clinical study during the design and development phase, if you want to do the clinical study as a validation study, then it's obvious. You have to have design freeze. Align clinical evaluation with regulatory and reimbursement pathways. Treat post-market surveillance as an integral part of your innovation. Post-market surveillance starts with the first day. And so think about regulatory compliance is no showstopper, for sure not. Don't be afraid of MDR and friends. Regulatory compliance is your seatbelt. It prevents the crash landing of your product and your company. If you want to know a little bit more, last semester I made this reader, The Evolution of Regulation, a story written in clinical failures. No, the next slide. This is the correct one. So here's the reader, and you can follow me on LinkedIn, and thank you for today.
So that was a fantastic input, and I'm sure who is the first with the first question. Okay. And keep the mic very close.
I have a question regarding the classification of medical device. It's very tricky to classify our medical device because it's a class 1, there's some recommendation to AA. Do you recommend if someone is not sure about the classification to, for example, classify as a medical device, software as medical device class A1, and then, for example, some components class, for example, to A or to B or something like this? Or they have to be whole with one class because it's...
The most risky component of your device defines your classification. And in the medical device regulation, there's the Annex 8 with the classification rules and the classification guideline. And there are some MDCG guidance documents. And then you can look at this. And you really have to give to the authority a kind of a report. Yeah, it's not you say out of the blue, it's class 1. So you say because this does not apply. So you have to make a kind of a rational. And it's pretty clear what the outcome is. I'm pretty sure. Yes, it's especially class 1 is really tricky. I have in my own company a class 1 digital therapeutics, but I really have to do and work a lot to get it down to class 1, because if you have treatment recommendation or a diagnosis in your intent and purpose, then software as medical device is class 2A. Avoid the trigger words, diagnosis or treatment decision or...
Strategy. Okay, next question here.
How does post-marketing surveillance look like for software as medical device? How does it differ from the device vigilance or pharmacovigilance?
Yeah, pharmacovigilance is another sandbox. And by the way, class 1 medical device, it's the same. You are under the medical device regulation. You have to show a quality management system implemented. You have to do clinical evaluation. So, and here there is no so much difference from the requirements. If you are an implant or a software, it's the same requirements. It's a little bit more tricky to get the input, because if you are an implant, you go to the hospital and say, show me the patient data. And if you are a software as medical device, you have to work with surveillance data from the patient. And so it's a little bit more engagement from you and your company to get the data, but it's a requirement still.
Okay, next question here.
Can you say a bit more about risk assessment and chatbots for vulnerable populations from a regulatory point of view?
Risk assessment for?
Chatbots for vulnerable population like
Oh.
ChatGPT.
And maybe rule-based versus LLM-based chatbots. That I would add.
This is really a tricky thing, and it starts a little bit with your software and AI policy at the end. So you also have to implement a policy in your company, how you work with AI, how you treat AI, what kind of principles of rule-based or LLM models you see. And then the risk management always must be seen out of three perspectives. And this does not change from AI. Risk management that you can avoid during design and development, so that you also implement some boundaries or something like this. Yeah, that the AI can learn, but there is an engineer that approves it. AI can suggest changes, but there is an engineer that approves it, so that you have a little bit boundaries. This is the part of your AI policy. The part of your AI policy is also how you qualify AI models. Yeah, you have to evaluate them, you have to qualify them, and you also have to monitor them. Yeah, the libraries also, for example, you have to qualify them that they really fit for your patient population. And so this is a little bit in the policy phase. So really define a document, a well-prepared, a rational, how you see AI, how you see software. By the way, open source software is also part of this kind of a policy, because open source software is also a nightmare. And the risk management, you always have to think about out of three perspectives. The risk that you can avoid during design and development, maybe the boundaries, maybe a cool evaluation and qualification, but then also the risk related from production and manufacturing. And production and manufacturing is also part of a software. It is also produced, it is manufactured, it is delivered. AI maybe manufactures himself a little bit, so you also have to respect this. And then risks resulting from the clinical use, including foreseeable misuse. And here you have to really validate your chatbot. You maybe have to simulate some chats, but it's really tricky. But if you want to know a little bit more, we also can do this in a one-to-one, because there are more questions related to this, and we have some policies, and I can share maybe.
And now I promote Precious again. So if this thing is using Precious, then you get it also, because we are in constant interactions anyway with Dietmar, ideally. Okay, next question here.
Yes, you just said that open source software is a nightmare. Can you maybe elaborate on that? Because from my point of view, isn't that the most validated and acceptable kind of software we have?
Yes.
Then why is it a nightmare?
Is this so?
Yes, you just said that.
No, that is a nightmare. I know that I have said it, but
Yeah.
you say it's the best software you have. I'm sorry, idiot can change it. And so you really have to think how you freeze this and how you version control it. And this is a lot. The most of startups don't have a philosophy or a policy how to freeze, how to version control, and how to archive this. And you really have to think this from the very first beginning, because worst case is you have a device planned and made with some kind of software aspects that in a few years really completely differs. And this is the nightmare, because a lot of startups and spin-offs do not respect this.
Okay, next one here in this corner.
One question again about the risk assessment. We personally already talked about that before, because with AI, we have like a lot of opportunities or possibilities that this chatbot could answer. So it makes it really hard to assess it in a static way. So we might need to have like a dynamic risk assessment. And we could also use AI again to test our AI systems. Is that a valid option, or is that a kind of like a chicken or egg problem?
Yeah, a little bit. The one eye blind gets the two eye blind on the hand walking through the room. No, it's a possibility to address this. It's also a kind of a possibility to think about legal disclaimers for the patient or agreements for the patient. Yeah, we have one case in the US, a suicide from an AI-driven antidepressant software, and this is of course the nightmare. Yeah, and in Germany we also have one that has it excluded in the intended purpose. It's a kind of a coaching chatbot also for some special moods in the person's mind, and they exclude not for depressive patients. So you can exclude it, yes, but how do you monitor this? And so there is a kind of a legal disclaimer and a questionnaire and a signature from the patient at the beginning. So we have tried to fix this at the very first beginning. But that's for sure not the best practice, but at least something, because to exclude a patient population, yeah, okay, at the end you are a little bit more safe. But for your company, it's still the worst case scenario if something like this happens. Then you can say, oh, we excluded the patient.
Okay. Further questions? Yeah.
I have a question. So once, for example, I get the okay in Switzerland and can go on the market, does it mean I can go or does it make it easier to also go or get the regulatory allowance in Germany, for example, or do I have to go through the whole process, or is there shortcuts?
There are two different principles. In Switzerland, you also work for the CE mark.
Yeah.
And the CE mark is also recognized in Germany. Now, the other way around, the CE mark is recognized in Switzerland, but it's the European Union mark. This works for every European country, including Switzerland, including Turkey, including South Africa and Israel, which are not European countries, but they accept the CE mark. And so, but this is only that you are allowed to sell. But this does not say something that someone will buy it. If you make it direct to the customer or to the patient, is something else. But if you want to have it reimbursed from a Krankenkassensystem, then these are different landscapes. You are reimbursed in Germany as a DiGA or as a Hilfsmittel, for example, but the similar philosophy in Switzerland will be a Miegel device or something like this, and it may be a door opener if you can show, hey, dear competent authority, dear Swissmedic, we are reimbursed in Germany from GKV, Spitzenverband der Krankenkassen, but this is not the guarantee that Switzerland says yes. They will want you to do an observational study maybe or something like this. And here it is also a kind of a strategy that you maybe already have a CE mark, because with the CE mark you can easily do or initiate an observational study, because you are a compliant product and you don't have to think about patient cover and insurance and everything like this. Yeah. But because Switzerland is out of the medical device regulation, and if you are not based in Switzerland, you have to think about a CH rep, a Swiss rep that guarantees regulatory compliance for you.
Could I use the same RCT to get the approval in different countries, or would I have to do a RCT in each country?
You for sure don't have to double your RCT, But for sure, you have to provide some more evidence in an observational setting. So meaning that you have your results from your RCT, and then you show it also works with Swiss patients, not in a comparative setting. Yeah? But every legislation and every reimbursement agency want to be respected and want to have you to create some own evidence for them. But for sure, not to really double the complete RCT. I don't think so. And with one of my companies, it's a digital therapeutics for visual field rehabilitation after stroke, and we are reimbursed in Germany as a Hilfsmittel, not a DIGA, because this is also a strategic decision. And we apply now for Meagle, and I would say 90% they have accepted, but they want to have some observation evidence that it also works with Swiss stroke patients.
Okay, wonderful. Yep.
So my question builds on this. So usually in pharma clinical trials, well, you do not have to replicate the trials, but you have to include patients from different countries, socioeconomic status.
Yeah.
So do you think that, so this seems to be like a gray area or a void at the point. Do you think that this will evolve?
That if you want to expand to different countries, that you have to include the additional patients.
Yes. Also,
yeah. You also can try to fix this. I did this with the comparison of the patient population. Can you transfer the anatomy or whatever from one country to another country? There is one very, very funny thing. It's not with a digital therapeutics, but there was years ago a medical device, a spinal fusion implant developed from an Asian company, and it was a minimal invasive surgical procedure that completely failed in US because of the different anatomy. And so there it is obvious. Then you have to rework your device or something like this. But if you can show that patient population is comparable because they are the same guidelines or the same, how is depression defined in Switzerland and how is depression defined in Germany? How is stroke defined in Switzerland and in Germany, and visual field loss? And then it gets obvious that this is the same definition and they are the same eyes. There is no anatomical difference. There you can argue it. And Swissmedic followed my argumentation, but forced me 20 patients they want to have in addition. So, yeah.
models and cultural
Yes. Yeah, but this is also something that you have to address, not in your clinical study, but before, if you evaluate your libraries or something like this, because there is also a big failure in US FDA. This was a cancer detection software AI that was trained with white-colored people and failed black-colored people, and so this you have to think before. Yeah, in what kind of context? Yeah, this is nothing that you should detect in your clinical study.
Okay, maybe a final question here from the audience. Who wants to be that person?
No one. Goodbye.
Okay, well then I would have a final one maybe. I mean, we have a lot of researchers here, and only a few of them maybe really want to be the entrepreneur and bring it to the market, but they still always face it to some degree the question, because they get it from the ethics committee and looking at Esther, you know, kind of you have not a validated DTX and you want to test it in a feasibility or RCT study. This is maybe hopefully an unqualified question, because I mean, we develop interventions and want to test whether they work and whether they follow that kind of purpose. What would be your reaction here? I mean, you cannot probably have a good answer to that one, right? I mean,
I do not know if I got it right, but yes, latest, if you involve patients in your testing, then you are under a competent authority. And this is why I gave you the example. You will see that Swissmedic or Swiss Ethics asks you for the investigator's brochure, asks you about the list of the general safety and performance requirements. And as I have shown, the investigator's brochure is based on a technical documentation. We have this kind of problem where a study group or a research group from ETH shaped the investigator's brochure as an additional document. Yeah. And they had some funny sentences in there. There is no risk known with our device. And then Swissmedic came back and asked, oh, you stated there is no risk known. Please show us your risk management file. and then it was nothing. Yeah, that's why I said if you bet it will work with the investigator's brochure and hopefully no one will ask, then you can build a facade. Yeah, but be aware, especially if you have AI or software, they will ask you for verification data or something like this. And they want to see that there are some risks detected. And they want to see that you have the conclusion, but the benefit outweighs the risk. And if you are a not medical device, a normal implant, be sure that they will ask you about biocompatibility data. They will come back to you. There was no submission in the last year where there was no question on top by Swissmedic. Please show us your. And that's why it is so important that you all know, because the research groups, almost all, think the investigator's brochure is made for the clinical trial. And this is correct, yes, but it's an excerpt of your technical documentation. And they also always think the general safety and performance requirements, it's only a list to check boxes. But every box that you check and say, oh, this requirement is applicable for us, we prepared that Swissmedic wants you to show evidence. And the general safety and performance requirements must be addressed with standards and norms. So meaning if you are an active device, or if you are a device working with electricity, it's not enough that you only show EMV testing. They want the evidence according to the ISO standard family 6061.
even for a smartphone app?
No.
No. Okay. So, okay.
But if you are software driving an equipment or something like this, so we have some scanners at ETH, and they asked. They only did EMV testing, and Swissmedic asked for 6061 results.
Okay.
And there's a difference. Because EMV testing, you can go to the lab and say, hey, test my device if it happens something with my fingers if I touch the device. But 6061, you have to go to an accredited lab. You cannot show them the places where they should test it. EMV, you can say test here and test there. So you give them the device, you give them your design and development file, you give them your risk management file and your usability file, and they define then the test spots. And so 6061, if you don't think it from the very first beginning, this brings you back a year. If you then have to do the design and development file, the risk management, and the waiting time for the accredited lab. So that's why it's so important to know this. And yes, 2 or 3 years ago, facade building
It still work.
did work with, and especially if you come from a university, but Swissmedic and the competent authorities also have recognized the gap of knowledge also in the best academic research groups concerning regulatory and compliance, not the science behind it.
Okay, wonderful. I think you mentioned a couple of things that we also touched upon in the preparation phase before we started with the prototyping on Tuesday. Intended use, for example, which is heavily linked to the distal outcome, right? So what is the overall and main goal you want to achieve at some point? This may be, if you can show in a study that this is really valid, this may be then the claim if you bring it into the market.
Yeah, and also some funny things that as an auditor or a technical assessor, we are also lazy and very pragmatic people. And for example, if you tell me about the intended use, I know that intended use is more related to ISO 14971, to risk management, because the medical device regulation does not say something about the intended use. They name it intended purpose. And the same thing is if you talk about the risk benefit of a device for the patient, then we as competent authority know that you are working with an outdated version of ISO 14971, because with the current version, it's not called risk benefit, it's called benefit risk.
Oh my God. Okay, so you for sure need at some point then someone like Dietmar and think about it rather during the preparation first, because in phase 4 it is then probably too late. With this, thank you one more time, Dietmar. Wonderful keynote.
Thank you.
Okay, we do a quick break, a little bit of coffee, a little bit of tea, and then we meet here again at 11, and then you get some final instructions to work on your pitches for tomorrow.